Uh,
There you go.
Beginning.
Ready whenever you are, dude.
Yeah, let me
Set on
just
mute.
kind of. There we go. Why is it? Give me 1 second. Why is it? I got way too many browser windows open here. Hold on a second. Start this presentation. Give me 1 second, guys. From the beginning. It's hey, it's never done this for me before. Hold on 1 second. Let me just reopen this. Okay. All right. So, all right. So, sorry about that. I know a few of you. I know Francis. I don't know some of you, but I've been a developer for Million Labs in the past. I've done a few other things for Million Labs. When I saw someone was interested in a SEO presentation, I figured I could step in and help out. It's something I've been doing for a while. So just a quick background on myself as it's relevant to this is I've been a bubble developer for about 4 years now. After I took a boot camp with Simon and Joff, been addicted ever since. But as it's relevant to today, I've actually done drop shipping for about 15 plus years. In the last 4 years, I've actually generated over $1 million in revenue through drop shipping, and mostly through organic search. So that's really kind of where I've picked up a lot of the skills today that I'm going to go through. But so high level, some things we're going to go through today are keyword strategy, which I think is probably the most important part of SEO. We're going to talk about on-page things that you can take versus off-page actions you can take as it relates to SEO. I'm also going to touch on local versus national SEO, which is a little bit, I'll call it national, but it's really kind of any type of business that doesn't have kind of a brick and mortar where you're only targeting a certain geography. There are some differences there. Simon, my guess is a lot of the projects you guys work on really aren't brick and mortar, so that might not be as relevant. I don't really cover a lot on it, but I figured it's worth touching on because there are some differences. So let me start with the keyword strategy, which I think is the most important part of doing SEO successfully. And so keyword strategy at its core is really figuring out what pages you want to target for what keywords. So generally speaking, as it relates to SEO, each page on a website, you can really only target for 2 to 3 keywords max, right? So I think most people end up trying to optimize the homepage for pretty much everything. And that's where I think a lot of people go wrong. And so basically, as you're building your keyword strategy, that's what it is. You've got your list of pages, and kind of under each page, which keywords do you want to target for that page, right? And kind of the second piece of your strategy is this, and I think this is kind of where we go into the keyword research is you really, especially if it's a brand new domain, you want to start off with low volume, less competitive keywords, and I'll kind of go through a tool that I use to kind of figure how to figure this out. Because it's, especially for a brand new domain, it's almost impossible to rank for kind of higher competitive keywords. So really what you want to do is incrementally go after higher and higher volume keywords. And as you start to rank for more key terms, it becomes easier and easier to rank for more key terms, right? And so literally for a brand new site, if you go after, key terms that have 10 searches a month, you can rank for that very quickly. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but you have to start somewhere. And so I think the tendency is for people to go after keywords where it's like, oh, there's a ton of volume, but that's really the wrong approach. Again, you want to take this incremental approach. And so I'm going to go through a couple of tools I use to kind of develop this strategy. So the first one that I use is SEMrush, and I may have to stop. Let me just share the screen again. Can you guys see that, my screen? Yes. Okay. So SEMrush, this is a paid tool. I'll show you a free one that I use as well. But I like it for a number of reasons. And so I use this tool. So I'll use a couple examples of real life projects that I did. So actually I got asked to come on. They actually brought me on as a partner with a nutrition coaching business. And so specifically he did what's called macro coaching, and specifically he used a technique called reverse dieting. So before I actually came on the project, I wanted to kind of figure out if I thought it could be successful. So I did this keyword research. So what I did is I actually plugged in. So if you go to Keyword Magic Tool, I actually plugged in reverse dieting. I actually did reverse dieting, and actually I did another one as well. And so what it does is it gives you, and actually it's actually gotten more competitive since I came on. So let me actually show you. I actually did this on the other. So here's why I like this tool. So it gives you suggestions of other keywords that are related. It gives you the search volume. It gives a competitive, KD stands for keyword difficulty. So it gives you a relative ranking of how difficult the tool thinks it would be to rank for that. And gives you some cost per click, so Google Ads data as well. So what's nice is, these, it gives you other suggestions that are related. So what's nice about this tool in particular is I can go in, because it gives me 2,800 keywords, right? So I can go in and filter by volume. I can go in and filter by keyword difficulty, and then I can go in and filter by what's called intent. So certain searches are more informational in nature, versus commercial and transactional are ones where there's a lot of what we call buyer intent. So these typically tend to be longer keyword terms, and they have higher buyer intent typically because they're searching for something very specific. So the more general terms, generally they're looking for information, versus the ones where it's what we call long tail keyword search, which is usually three words or more. Those are things where someone's looking for something very specific, and typically that's intent to buy, right? The more specific that someone's searching for, the more they're looking for something that they're looking to buy, or something along those lines. So that's why I really like this tool. The other one that I use that is free. So this is, I think SEMrush is like $120 a month. You could use the Google Ads keyword research, keyword search tool. I forget what it's called. So it's if you go into a Google Ads and go under Keyword Planner. So I usually go under Discover Keywords, and I could do reverse dieting. It's going to give me a similar results. I think SEMrush might actually use the Google Ads API. So it gives you something similar. It gives you a competition, which this is actually a little bit, this is for paid search competition. And this is specifically for SEO. But I use this because it is an indication of how competitive it would be to rank for that on SEO as well. So, and I can tell you, for reverse dieting, we were actually able to rank for reverse dieting fairly quickly for a brand new domain. So this actually was pretty accurate. And actually, again, this was a big reason why I went on board with that project, because I felt like we could rank, and we actually did. And so we're actually ranking top 10 for a number of keywords, top 3 for a couple keywords that are converting really well for us. So these are the tools I use to kind of develop the keyword strategy. Going on to the next, and I'll answer questions at the end. So I'll go through these kind of other factors that we talked about kind of incrementally. So I'm going to first cover on-page factors, which I find, if I were to kind of rank the importance of it, I would say that generally speaking, the off-page factors tend to have a higher impact, but these on-page factors are very important as well. So going through the on-page factors, which is I think more where you can control it as a bubble developer. So number one is content, which isn't really, on the developer, but just kind of some things on the content to be aware of is Google is liking more volume now. So, pages without a lot of content, they don't love. So generally speaking, we try and aim for 1,000 words or more. And so some of the problems that I've run into is sometimes more content isn't great for conversion. So even if some of that content is on the, kind of below, what we call below the fold, which is the part of the page that loads, the above the fold is anything that kind of loads when you load it on, typically on a desktop. And so sometimes, I'll put some of this content below the fold, so it's still there, so Google can see it, but it doesn't necessarily affect conversion, because sometimes less content is better for conversion. So some things to be aware of. The other thing is Google's algorithm has gotten smarter, and so a lot of people, Google's in a constant war with people that are trying to game the system, and so their algorithm has really gotten smarter with people that are trying to game the system. So the recommendation on content really is write for a human first, then go back and edit that content to kind of fit into your SEO strategy, right? And so don't try and write for, to optimize for that keyword. Write something that is going to be beneficial and valuable to a human, and then go back and optimize it for SEO. And so one of the things that you don't want to do is what's called keyword stuff, where you've got your keyword that you're trying to optimize on the page, and then you just repeat that keyword over and over again. That actually hurts you. And so kind of a general rule of thumb, and this is, don't take this literally, but generally I would say maybe one keyword per paragraph. Mention that once at least, maybe once, maybe you can get away with twice, but really don't not too much more than that. And then we're going to talk about linking later on, but I wanted to mention it here is, ideally one internal or external link, either, linking to another page on your site or linking to an external website, having one per page. One per paragraph is kind of a general rule of thumb. You don't overdo it. Again, you can get away with a little bit more than that, but just kind of, this is just a general rule of thumb. So that's kind of, some general guidelines for content on the page. So the metadata, and this is, again, this is something you can do as a bubble developer, is, if you go into the, actually, let me go back into the presentation for a second. So stop that share and then go back into the presentation. And it's slow today. I don't know. PowerPoint's not cooperating with me, so I'm actually going to do. I'm actually going to share my screen this way. All right. So, so as far as the metadata on a bubble page, if you click, I think it right click on the page brings up this this on the page properties. So if you kind of at the top of the page is a page title. So that's not really for SEO. That's kind of what shows on the browser bar. But if you scroll down towards the bottom of that page properties page section, then there's a title for SEO and then a description. So those are the two metadata sections that I'm talking about. So in that, what you want to do is for the title section, an ideal length is about 50 to 60 characters. And ideally, you do want to include the key, the primary keyword that you're targeting for. And then in the description section, that you want to keep to about 50 to 160 characters. And again, you also want to include the keywords there as well. And let me show you exactly why you want to keep it to 160 characters. So if I go to the next one. So that metadata, when you do a Google search, and this is actually my dropshipping site here, the metadata shows up here. So the title shows up here, and then that description shows up here. Generally speaking, Google will basically truncate anything more than 160 characters. So that's why you want to keep that 260 characters. Now, the other thing I want to point out, which is really not related to SEO, but there's a marketing aspect to this, because what's in here between the title and the description is what's going to entice someone to click on that. So you want to write that in a way where you've got 160K. It's almost like a tweet that you want to kind of make that link attractive to that person to click on. So I do want to kind of point that out, even though it's not really directly related to SEO. The other piece, which I'll be honest, I'm really bad at, but as you're building your sites, the images, do show up in the Google Images. So you do want to optimize those as well. And so if you include the keywords in the file names, those can help them show up in the Google Images search when you do a search. So you want to use hyphens. And so, like, for instance, this is a picture I wanted to optimize. I was trying to optimize for paint by number. I would do the file name is paint-by-number. And that's kind of I'm gonna kind of, that hyphen thing I think is important later on as well. So that's another thing you want to optimize for. The slug, this is another one as well that Google looks at this when they're looking, kind of ranking different pages. They're looking at the slug. So the slug is the domain name / and then whatever that part of the address is after that, that's kind of considered the slug. So one of the things I wanted to point out is Google defaults page slugs to Google _maps. That's a little bit old school. It used to be, Google used to like underscores. They actually like hyphens now. So generally speaking, my recommendation is to change that page slug to hyphenated versus underscore. Because that's a little bit of a new recommendation. I'm actually not sure why Google Bubble doesn't do that automatically, but that's generally a best practice. So that's for a static page. For those of you that are doing dynamic slugs, so good example of that is if you're doing a blog in Bubble or an e-commerce product page, and you've got page data on there, a lot of times it'll use the unique ID, to display information dynamically on those pages. My recommendation is actually to use the slugs, because again, that's going to help for SEO. And so what you want to do is make sure you update, so if it's let's say it's an e-commerce site, and I apologize if you can't read it, but I'm sure you're familiar with it. If you're sending product data to a product page on an e-commerce site, make sure you update that product slug. So in Bubble there's a set a thing slug action. So if you want to do that where where it dynamically takes the product name and sets the thing slug, that's something you can do as well. But having that, let's say domain name / products / custom mug is going to be much more beneficial than if you have that / and then the unique ID, the Bubble unique ID. That's not going to mean anything to Bubble, Google's algorithm. So a couple recommendations there. The other thing you want to be aware of on a page are the H1 through H6 headers. Header tags communicate to Google the hierarchy of importance of the information on that page. So think of it as an outline. So H1 header information is the most important information on that page, all the way down to H6. And so you want to make sure that on your page, you should really only have one H1 header tag, and that really should be the keyword. That ideally has the keyword that you're trying to optimize for. And then if you've got subtopics, then you go ahead and use H2 through H6 on there. Those you can have multiple on the page. But again, that just kind of indicates to Google, like, hey, here's the most important information on this page. Here's some other information that's important, but not as important. Speed, this isn't a good one for Bubble, unfortunately, but speed is an important factor, especially on mobile. So for those that don't know, so I have the URL later on, but so page speed is kind of a good indication of how Google likes views that page. So so I've got a WordPress one, which is I'm able to I've been able to optimize the speed on WordPress a little bit better than Bubble, but paint by. So this is my drop shipping site. So this doesn't have, so it anything in the green is good, and it usually gives a diagnosed performance. So for some reason it didn't show it here, but let me just show, these are in the 90s typically. So it gives a score between 0 and 100. So if I just do, so on mobile it's 86, on desktop it's close to 100. So if I'm going to just do one on I just built this right, just to give you the so that's an indication of how fast it is on desktop and mobile. So if I do one on here, when I ran it, this does take a while. It was in the high 20s. Oh no, so 42. So so definitely slower. I'll be honest, and Simon, you may know other ways to do it. I'm not sure, other than maybe reducing the number of plugins you're using. I'm not sure how much we've got control over, how fast these pages load, other than kind of, hiding things on page load and only showing them when needed. That has helped. And like I said, reducing the number of plugins, but unfortunately, there's going to be a limit to what we can do here. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of make you aware of that is becoming a more important factor in SEO, because Google doesn't want people to click on stuff and have them wait forever, and so faster pages tend to rank higher in their algorithm. All right, so backlinks. So those were on page. Now I'm going to start getting into backlinking, which is off page optimization, which in my experience seems to have a higher impact on your ability to rank than on page is important. Don't get me wrong. If you have poor on page, then you could backlink all you want, and well, you probably could still rank. But if two sites are equal, if one page is as far as off page optimization, if one page has really good on page SEO and another page has really poor on page SEO, the page with better on page SEO is going to rank higher. So, and the reason why this is Google indexes pages through what's called spiders, and basically what they do is they crawl the internet by navigating through links on pages, right? And so that's why links are still such an important part of SEO. So the factors that matter in backlinking are, what is the domain authority of the page? That's so just to clarify, so a backlink is an external page that is linking to your site, and so the quantity and quality of those backlinks is a huge factor in your ability to rank, right? And so some of the factors are, what's the domain authority, which is no one knows exactly what Google factors, but based on experimentation, people have a sense of what factors. So domain authority is a score which was created, I believe, by Moz, which is a company that kind of builds SEO tools. So domain authority is a score of how authoritative Google will view you, and it's a guess, but it seems to be a pretty accurate guess. So for example, Facebook and Google are a 99 or 100 domain authority. When you start and register a brand new domain, it's going to have a 0 domain authority, right? So I'll kind of go into more detail in here. The anchor text is what is for that link. What is the text that someone clicks on to navigate, to that particular link? Internal linking. So this is really an on-page optimization, but I put it here just so you would understand kind of why it's important. So internal linking is actually really important as well. So whether it's in your content or in your menu items, having internal links with really good anchor text. So if you're trying to optimize for reverse dieting and you have a link to a blog page and the link, the anchor text, which is the text that someone's clicking on for that link, is reverse dieting, and you're going to this, really good blog article on reverse dieting, that's going to give a really good signal to Google that that blog post is, on reverse dieting, and it's obviously if the content's good, then that's going to help as well. But these are all signals to Google that this page is about reverse dieting. And then also, this isn't a direct help, but Google doesn't want to just see you just linking to your own pages. So linking out to external pages with, a high amount of authority, that actually helps as well. Google, said anything that shows that you're a real site that's not just trying to game the system, Google likes. And so doing those things, occasionally are also helpful as well. So domain authority, let me just go into that real briefly. So let me just go back to SEMrush. And so if I go into domain overview and I type in, I'm just going to use my own, just search. And you can do this for competitors as well. So that domain authority, number one, I've got an authority score of 28, which isn't terrible, and 7,500 backlinks. And so, those are now that I've got that information though, what do I do with that? So you want to start getting backlinks. I'll be honest, I use a service, and basically that service has a relationship with a whole bunch of blogs in different topics, and they go and reach out to those blog owners and they say, hey, will you post an article on XYZ on your site? And then what they do is they put a blog post on that site, and that links back to my page, right? And it uses the anchor text that I'm targeting, right? And so you could do that yourself, but it takes a lot of time. That's why I pay someone to do it. And so now, if you are a new domain, general recommendation is you start with something like a domain authority, like 30 or more, maybe not too much higher than 30. And then you start generating blogs, but you don't want to do too many at a time, because you can do what's called spamming links. And so you want to do it in a natural way. So I usually do a few a month. And ideally what happens is if you put quality content out there, so for instance, I'm sure like, Million Labs' blog, if you're considered an authority and you're putting quality content out there, people will start linking to your site, naturally. That's the ideal way to do it, is you put quality content out there, and then people start linking to your site and sharing it on their social posts or on their blogs as well, because that's an authoritative, piece of content, right? That's the ideal way to do it. That's what Google really wants you to do it, but sometimes that can be slow. So that's why, sometimes you kind of force the issue a little bit. And once as your domain authority grows, you want to start maybe using backlinks where the domain authority of those sites are about 10 more than 10, maybe 20 more than your domain authority. And that starts to bring your domain authority up over time. But again, you don't want to do that too quickly. And again, Google doesn't like things that that are natural. So if you start putting out, and I've done it before, I learned it the hard way, where I got pages start ranking. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. So I went on and got 15 backlinks, 1 month, and it actually, my ranking plummeted the next month, right? So you want to do it kind of in a natural way. And so anchor text, and I apologize, this is small, but I just used the blog, and so this blog article has links to small businesses and blogging and goal setting, right? And so those pages that they're linking to, those backlinks with that anchor text are helping those pages rank for those key terms, assuming that this is I forget what the domain authority for this site is. So I just kind of want to stress the importance of what your anchor text is. Internal linking, again, this is an example of my site. So this is a blog article, and it's about it's a blog on creating custom paint by number kits. And then there's a link in that blog to custom paint by number kits, which links to my product page on my e-commerce site. So those types of things do help. Even though it's on your own site, Google still is crawling that, and it still helps to kind of tell Google, this is what this page is about. Real quickly on local. So again, local SEO is typically for businesses that are brick and mortar. So with brick and mortar, it doesn't really help you to target people that are outside a certain geographic area, unless you're like Disney World, right? So, but like if you're like I know there's international people, but like a Kentucky Fried Chicken, right? That's in a specific geography, right? You don't necessarily want to optimize for people that are outside, a 50-mile radius, something like that. And so how do you optimize for that? So one is in the anchor text, if you did, fried chicken, Wilmington, Delaware as your anchor text for those backlinks, that can help as well. But there's a couple other things that help optimize for local, that where Google, you're telling Google that this is the area that I'm targeting. So number one is local listings, which I'll cover in a second. And then reviews like Google reviews, Yelp reviews, Facebook reviews. Those they're important for both, but they're particularly important for local businesses. So having a lot of 5-star reviews, that does help rank, local businesses rank a little bit more so. So local listings, so these are things like Foursquare, or there's a bunch of just different kind of directory sites that list your business, right? And so the important thing here for local SEO is what your NAP listings are: name, address, phone, or NAP. They have to match exactly. So once those listings start differentiating from each other, that confuses Google, and that hurts the local rankings for those businesses. So a lot of times I'll use syncing tools. So Yext is a big one, although I don't love Yext, because once you stop paying Yext, then it reverts all your listings back. So actually I actually resell some of these tools. So I've used Vendasta, Advice Local. There's a bunch of them, so I don't want to list all of them, but you're basically looking for local listing syncing tools. It's listing management is another thing that's called. So SEMrush has a local listing management tool that you can use. The other piece is sometimes they don't do this, but there's used to be 4 aggregators. I think right now there's 3 aggregators. So Foursquare, Data Axle, and Neustar Localese. So actually that's why it used to be 4, is because Neustar and Localese actually used to be 2. So someone acquired who, I'm guessing Neustar did. And so basically these aggregators, a lot of other directory listings pull from their database. And so if you sync with these 3 aggregators, that automatically gets pushed out to about 300 plus other listings. So having, kind of syncing to those aggregators is a big deal. You want to make sure that if your listing management tool doesn't do that, then sometimes you may have to get another one to actually do that. And a lot of times that's an extra cost, of course, but that's kind of important within local SEO. Some of the tools I mentioned, so SEMrush, PageSpeed Insights, Google Ads keyword tool, Ubersuggest is another one so Neil Patel, if you're not familiar with him, he's actually he had a nice little exit from a startup, and then he became kind of a digital marketing guru. His content, he puts a lot of good content on SEO. I follow him. I'm actually partnering on a e-commerce business on one of his partners in his digital marketing business. So which is pretty cool. But he launched Ubersuggest. There's a free version of that, and then there's a paid version, but it's a little bit like SEMrush to do keyword research, and it kind of keeps track of your organic ranking. A lot of cool tools on there. Oh, here's another tool I want to mention: Google Search Console. This is free and it's from Google. So what you have to do to add your domain, you basically have to verify your domain. So when you go in here and add a property, it'll ask you to verify your domain. You just want to make sure you have that listed. So there's a lot of great tools on here. So number one is this inspect URL. So if I go in here and I just inspect URL, so number one, it says URL is on Google, which means that Google is indexing that domain. If it's not, you can request an indexing from here. And so it gives you kind of information. So here's something I want to mention. So it's user declared canonical link. So this is a little bit more advanced, but I do want to touch on it because I'm going to give you a case study that I experienced personally that showed how important this is in SEO. So, Google views, so something like HTTPS, justpaintbynumber.com without the slash and with the slash, Google actually views that as two different URLs. So a canonical is you telling, I don't even know, I'll be honest, I'm not even sure. I can do it in WordPress. I'm not sure I can do it in Bubble. But a canonical basically you're telling Google that the one we want you to index is this URL. So ignore the other one, but this is the URL we want you to index. So sometimes if you have two pages with exactly the same content, which isn't good, sometimes you'll say, okay, I want, canonical can say to Google, ignore this page. This is the page we want you to care about. So, having this search console, you can kind of get that information. I'll have to look. I should have looked this up. I'm not sure if there's a way to change canonicals within Bubble. But yeah, there's a lot of information on here. I'm not going to get into too much on here, but I wanted to kind of point that out as a really good resource. So I wanted to share this case study because I think it was an unfortunate situation for myself, but in retrospect, I learned so much about SEO from going through this. So my e-commerce site was hacked. It was a WordPress site. And so before the hack, we were ranking top 3 for a bunch of really competitive keywords. So what happened was the site was hacked and cloned. So it was, I kind of figured this out. And what they did when they hacked it is they added canonical redirects. They must have had some script that basically for each page on my WordPress site, it basically added a canonical redirect to their clone site, to the corresponding page on their clone site. And so what happened is once that happened, Google ignored my page. So I disappeared from Google completely. And the clone site was on page 2 for those highly competitive keywords on page 2. And they hadn't registered they only registered their domain like the week before. So, which is not normal, right? So typically a brand new domain would not do that. But basically what was happening is the domain authority of my site was being passed to their website through these canonical links. And so I kind of highlight that the importance of linking, because again, linking is the way Google connects with the internet. And so, I can't stress enough. I mean, I wish I still had it, but I've seen instances where I've gotten backlinks to a page. So I have another one that sells custom cornhole boards. I got these backlinks for about 5 different keywords. And literally the next month, my rankings jumped up about 10 or 15 slots on Google. And it corresponded with the backlinks that I got. So, I can't stress enough that, the on page is important, but the off page, in my experience, has moved the needle a little bit more. So that's all I had. But I'm definitely open to questions. Hopefully that was helpful. That helps you guys a little bit. I tried to add as much as I could as far as Bubble developers, what control do we have versus some of it is a little bit out of our control.
Questions, sir. I guess the one that you see asked is around it, it's a technical thing around it's to do with, I guess it's to do with slugs and stuff like that, but it's around dynamic pages and how you can make sure that dynamic pages get ranked well. It comes up in the Bubble forum all the time.
Yeah.
And there's some technical reasons why apparently Bubble doesn't rank well. I don't really understand them, but I don't know if you know anything about that or anybody else in the group.
Well, I mean, part of it might have been what I talked about, right? So if you're not using slugs to send that page data, then it's not going to rank well, right? Because that unique ID, if you send the unique ID, that's meaningless to Google. But if you send it as a slug and you have this either keyword match, again, like the best example I can give is an e-commerce site, right? So if you basically generate the slug from the product name, that's going to be more meaningful to Google than the unique ID.
Yeah, that makes sense. But is it, if you take this like the sitemap, does Bubble automatically include like dynamic pages in the sitemap, and does that matter?
So that's a good question. You'd have to look at that because you can get that dynamic page index definitely, right? Because if you've got a link from your page to that dynamic page, Google will crawl that and will index that. So I gotta imagine there's a way to do it where you can dynamically add those pages to your sitemaps. Because if you can get crawled, then it can get added to the sitemap. And again, that's why it's important. One, your internal linking, right? Because if you have a page on your site that has no links to it, no way to get to it from the main domain, then that's kind of like the unwanted stepchild, right? So if you've got a way to crawl to it, then it can get indexed. So
Makes sense.
I got one question regarding internal linking. So how do you, let's say, for instance, the Million Labs blog, where we have lots of articles around different topics, and some of them we might want to mention, on a specific blog site. How do you think that those internal linking strategies work with dynamic pages? Like you have a page that it's called blog post, for instance, and you want to have like maybe 3 or 4 sources from your own blog as well included in a specific post. How does Google work with that?
What I might do actually, let me just share my screen. I'm gonna see it right now. So I'm on the blog right now. So let's just go in here. Okay, so right off the bat, I would tell you guys you want to hyphenate that because Google's not going to be able to recognize that. So you want to hyphenate the keywords in the words in there as opposed to putting in one word. I'm just curious if I put this into the URL inspector. Okay. So Simon, if you go into your search console and drop those URLs in, you'll be able to tell if Google is indexing those or not. But right off the bat, I would tell you that if you hyphenate and kind of build into the workflow as you generate the blog posts, so automatically hyphenate those slugs, then I think that'll help you rank better than just lumping into one word like that.
Yeah, so that looks like an easy win because I guess we can. I mean, I'm just looking at that and going. Obviously, what it does is it just takes the name of the title of the blog post and just removes the spaces from it. But instead of removing spaces, we replace the space with a hyphen. Yeah,
because that's gonna just make it easier for Google to understand what it is, what's it about. Pablo, does that answer your question or
no? Kind of, but I was more about the linking that you want to include to other posts, to your own blog posts. So let's say, for instance, in this article, there's a paragraph where I mentioned, so similar to what we explained in this other article, And so I was curious how's been your experience like doing internal linking with dynamic bubble pages.
So number one, as far as internal linking, so these listings right here, so these would be considered internal links right here, right? And so that's helpful. But if you had a blog post, for instance, you had a link within, let's just say they had I don't so you guys need to start putting the internal links in your in your blog post. But let's just say video creator, that was an external link. Well, no, that was a link to another link on their page. So that itself is not a dynamic link, right? That is a static link. And so even though from our perspective, right, the blog post is a dynamic page, but also from Google's perspective, it's not really. If you have the slugs in here and you have the internal link, Google's going to go through and see these different links, and then it's going to go to this blog post. It's not going to. To Google, it's not going to be a dynamic page. It's just going to be a page on the site, right? And so it's going to read all the content on that site, and it's going to see these other links, and that particular link is not dynamic, so it's going to crawl to that page, and let's say it's just a page on Video Creator, so that is going to be helpful on it. So I mean, I would say, Simon, one other win is if you make sure within those blog posts that you start to kind of put additional internal links to other pages. That's going to be helpful as well, or external pages as well. You want to throw a couple ones to external authorities as well. But that could help. Pablo, I apologize. I'm not sure I'm fully answering your question now.
Yeah, no, that is more clear. Yeah, I guess when you are on the admin side, when you're creating the post with rich text editor, you will need to include the dynamic link.
Correct. Yeah. So if you're doing a blog post, you definitely want to add a rich text editor, so you do make it easier for that user to add internal links. Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you.
I have a question related to, like, do you recommend using Bubble as a like a tool for blog post, or like do you recommend it for like some other blog post like Medium or any other platform? And in this case, how do you approach, say, we want to have a blog on subdomain or as a page?
Oh, that's a great question. So if I was purely doing a blog with no other functionality that couldn't be done with that didn't have kind of any special kind of more application driven functionality, I probably would go WordPress. If you look at WordPress from an SEO perspective is probably going to be, and I've done some research on this, I think Wix was one of the worst, but WordPress was one of the best. It's probably the best. It is probably easiest to rank for a page, right? But if it was purely for a blog, I'm sorry, what was the rest of your question, Vishal? I apologize.
Yeah. So so my question is, say if I use in case of WordPress as a blog site, how should I aim to integrate that with my Bubble application?
Oh, gotcha.
Should I put it on a subdomain or like as a under a page?
I'll be honest, subdomain is not ideal. So if you're trying to rank for your main domain and then you have your WordPress, so if you had an application that you ultimately were trying to rank for, then that is a reason why you would want to put that blog within the Bubble app itself. Because it can help a little bit, but ultimately it's going to see that as two different domains or two different websites.
Okay. And I have one more question related to how you update meta description dynamically. So in one of your slides, you presented like on Google search, it includes some reviews, it includes some more feature about the website. So how do you approach doing that from Bubble application?
Yeah, so you might have missed it. So if you go in here, so if you so if you just double click on the page itself,
Can you share your
uh,
screen?
yeah, so then it pulls up the page properties. So this is this is the page title, which really ultimately determines what shows up in the. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not sharing my screen. Am I? Sorry about that. I'll never. Okay, so if I go to a page in Bubble and I double click somewhere, not on an element, but so that pulls up the page properties. So the page title, that's not SEO related. It kind of determines what shows up in the browser tab. But if you scroll down, so then here, the title, so the title goes here, and again, that's going to be 50 to 60 characters, and then the description goes here. So if I go into custom numbers, I'm not, I don't think I'm one right now. Yeah, actually I am one. So then the title is going to be what shows up here, and then the description is going to be what shows up here, but it typically truncates it right about 160 characters. So that's why I want to keep that on 160 characters. But yeah, does that answer your
And
question?
how do you include like free 17-day delivery, 30-day
So
returns in that
that
specific?
is what's called schema.
Okay.
And so WordPress has that built in. There might be a plugin for SEO schema in Bubble. I've never used it. I'll be honest, most of my Bubble sites, I'm not really worried about ranking it, just because it's typically an application that's more for internal use. But so it's there's certain types of schema where it's kind of fields that are in kind of the back end code that Google reads. So for e-commerce, there's specific schema that's typically used that it starts to pull for this kind of type of stuff. So product ratings is another one. So it's code on the back end. I'd be curious to know.
I'd have thought you could inject it, in that same box you've got there. You can put in
You might
HTML
be
or
able
Java.
to.
So you might
Yeah,
just
here
be
you
able
go.
to stick it in there.
There are Google schema review snippets, so here's one. So different schema that you can add into it. So you might be able to add that code in. I've never done it, but I'm sure you could. So each category has different types of schema. Like for instance, like travel websites, they're going to pull in different schema than an e-commerce website. I'm not an expert on that kind of stuff. I have an SEO team that kind of does that, but I could definitely kind of point you in the right direction.
Got it. Thanks.
There's something in the chat, or did I? Okay. Okay, so you found the domain authority ranking in the SEMrush. Yeah, so I did use SEMrush for the domain authority. But there are other free tools that you can use. Let me just pull that up real quick. If I go into domain authority checker, Moz has one. Moz, I think, was the one that created domain authority. So there are free ones that you can use to check domain authority. So, oh shoot, I'm sorry. All right. So let me just go through real quick to see if there was a few more questions. Link versus static text. Link versus static text in your Bubble pages, which works better for your Bubble app SEO? I'm not sure if I fully understand that question, but I guess it's really a combination of both. You need to kind of optimize both. So I apologize if I didn't answer that question. Is there ever a common reason you'd want to remove a backlink instead of trying to? Yes. So the question is there ever a common reason you'd want to remove a backlink instead of trying to increase them? So yes, there are things like called toxic links that Google, I guess that actually hurt your domain authority. And so you actually would want to remove them. And so there is I can't find it, but basically there's a tool in the search console basically that allows you to disavow I think it's in here but under the site links search bar. So basically you can disavow that backlink and saying, hey, we don't want that backlink, and Google would kind of ignore that, and so it wouldn't hurt your ranking. Also, separately, do you think auto-gen SEO tools? I'm not familiar with auto-gen SEO tools, so I apologize for that. So I think those are all the questions I see in the chat. So I'm happy to stick around a little bit longer if anyone's interested, but hopefully that was helpful.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sam. That's amazing. Thanks. And I'll send you the video file.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Simon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.